For 40 years, Nancy Rooks kept a secret. She was Elvis Presley's maid at Graceland until the day he died in 1977. She saw everything: the late nights, the prescription bottles, the loneliness behind the fame. But Nancy never talked. Not to the tabloids, not to the biographers, not to anyone. But when she finally agreed to tell her story, and what she revealed about Elvis Presley, the man behind the legend, will change everything you thought you knew about the king. Nancy passed away in 2016. But before she died, she gave interviews that exposed the truth about life inside Graceland. The truth about Elvis's final days, his struggles, his pain, and the moment she knew he was dying. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Nancy stayed silent for so long and why she finally had to speak. Nancy Rooks was born in Memphis. She was a black woman working in the South during segregation, raising her own family while working for one of the most famous white men in the world. She started at Graceland in 1967, just after Elvis married Priscilla. Elvis was 32 years old, at the height of his powers, filming movies and preparing for his legendary comeback special. Nancy's job was simple: keep Graceland clean, cook meals, do laundry, take care of the house. But what she actually did was far more important. Nancy became one of Elvis's most trusted confidants, someone he could talk to without judgment, someone who saw him at his worst and never betrayed him. In the world of Elvis Presley, where everyone wanted something, where loyalty was rare, where people sold stories to tabloids for cash, Nancy Rooks was different. She was there to work, to serve, to keep the household running. And because she didn't want anything from Elvis except her paycheck, he trusted her completely. Nancy saw Elvis at 3 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. She cleaned up after his legendary parties. She cooked his favorite foods, burnt bacon and peanut butter and banana sandwiches. She knew about the prescription drugs long before the public did. She saw the decline in his health. She watched as the vibrant young man she'd first met slowly deteriorated into the bloated, exhausted figure the world saw. And for 40 years after Elvis died, Nancy kept quiet. She attended his funeral. She mourned him privately. She moved on with her life. But the memories never left her. And eventually, she realized the world deserved to know the truth. Not the tabloid version, not the sensationalized stories. The real Elvis. The one only she had seen. Nancy Rooks sat down for a series of interviews. She was 80 years old. Her health was failing. And she decided it was time. The first thing Nancy wanted people to know: Elvis was kind. People think he was this larger-than-life figure, Nancy said, but in the house, he was just a man. A lonely man who wanted someone to talk to. Nancy described mornings at Graceland. Elvis would sleep until late afternoon because of his reverse schedule. When he finally came downstairs, he'd head straight to the kitchen. He'd always say, "Nancy, what's for breakfast?" she recalled. Didn't matter that it was 4 p.m. To him, it was morning. Elvis loved burnt bacon. Nancy stressed this: not crispy, burnt. If it wasn't black, he'd send it back, she said with a laugh. He also loved what Nancy called his special sandwich peanut butter, banana, and sometimes bacon, grilled in butter. The sandwich that would later become famous as the Elvis sandwich. But Nancy also revealed something most people didn't know. Elvis was incredibly generous with the staff. He'd give us bonuses all the time, Nancy said. Christmas, birthdays, sometimes just because. He bought me a car once, just walked up and handed me the keys. This generosity extended beyond money. Nancy said Elvis treated the black staff at Graceland with respect that was rare for a white Southern man at the time we lived in. He never talked down to us, Nancy explained. He'd sit in the kitchen with me and talk, really talk, about his mama, about his music, about his problems. Elvis would tell Nancy things he didn't tell anyone else. About his unhappy marriage to Priscilla, about the pressure of being Elvis Presley, about how tired he was. He'd say, "Nancy, I just want to be normal," she recalled. He'd say, "I want to go to the grocery store without people screaming." But Nancy also saw the dark side. The mood swings, the temper, the prescription pills. There were good days and bad days, Nancy said carefully. On bad days, you stayed out of his way. She described Elvis throwing things when he was angry, shouting at staff, locking himself in his bedroom for days. But he always apologized, Nancy added. Always. He'd come find you later and say he was sorry. That's the kind of man he was. This was the Elvis Nancy knew. Complicated, a human, struggling with fame that was slowly destroying him. Nancy Rooks sat down for a series of interviews. She was 80 years old. Her health was failing, and she decided it was time. The first thing Nancy wanted people to know, Elvis was kind. People think he was this larger-than-life figure, Nancy said, but in the house, he was just a man. A lonely man who wanted someone to talk to. Nancy described mornings at Graceland. Elvis would sleep until late afternoon because of his reverse schedule. When he finally came downstairs, he'd head straight to the kitchen. He'd always say, "Nancy, what's for breakfast?" she recalled. Didn't matter that it was 4 p.m. To him, it was morning. Elvis loved burnt bacon. Nancy stressed this, not crispy, burnt. If it wasn't black, he'd send it back, she said with a laugh. He also loved what Nancy called his special sandwich peanut butter, banana, and sometimes bacon, grilled in butter. The sandwich that would later become famous as the Elvis sandwich. But Nancy also revealed something most people didn't know. Elvis was incredibly generous with the staff. He'd give us bonuses all the time, Nancy said. Christmas, birthdays, sometimes just because. He bought me a car once, just walked up and handed me the keys. This generosity extended beyond money. Nancy said Elvis treated the black staff at Graceland with respect that was rare for a white Southern man at the time we lived in. He never talked down to us, Nancy explained. He'd sit in the kitchen with me and talk, really talk, about his mama, about his music, about his problems. Elvis would tell Nancy things he didn't tell anyone else. About his unhappy marriage to Priscilla, about the pressure of being Elvis Presley, about how tired he was. He'd say, "Nancy, I just want to be normal," she recalled. He'd say, "I want to go to the grocery store without people screaming." But Nancy also saw the dark side. The mood swings, the temper, the prescription pills. There were good days and bad days, Nancy said carefully. On bad days, you stayed out of his way. She described Elvis throwing things when he was angry, shouting at staff, locking himself in his bedroom for days. But he always apologized, Nancy added. Always. He'd come find you later and say he was sorry. That's the kind of man he was. This was the Elvis Nancy knew. Complicated, a human, struggling with fame that was slowly destroying him. But the most important thing Nancy revealed was about Elvis's prescription drug use. For years, people speculated. Tabloids ran stories. But Nancy was there. She saw it firsthand. The pills started after his mama died, Nancy explained. Elvis's mother, Gladys, died, and Elvis was devastated. He never got over losing her, Nancy said. Never. He'd talk about her all the time. He'd go up to his room and just cry. To cope with the grief, Elvis started taking sleeping pills. Then pills to wake up, then pills for pain, then pills for anxiety. By the time Nancy started working at Graceland, Elvis's drug use was already serious. There were bottles everywhere, Nancy recalled. In his bathroom, on his nightstand, in his pockets. Nancy would find pills while doing laundry, while cleaning his room, while making his bed. I'd tell him, "Elvis, this is too much," Nancy said. He'd say, "Don't worry, Nancy. The doctor prescribed them. They're legal." This was Elvis's justification. He wasn't doing illegal drugs. Everything was prescribed by doctors, mainly Dr. George Nichopoulos, known as Dr. Nick. Nancy said Dr. Nick came to Graceland regularly, sometimes daily. He'd bring a bag full of medication, Nancy described. Elvis would tell him what he needed, and Dr. Nick would give it to him. Nancy witnessed the effect these drugs had on Elvis. The slurred speech, the confusion, the falls. He'd fall down the stairs, Nancy said. Hit his head. We'd have to help him up. She described finding Elvis passed out in strange places. On the bathroom floor. In the TV room, once in the driveway, We'd have to carry him to bed, Nancy recalled. He was a big man. It took 2 or 3 of us. But what haunted Nancy most was that nobody stopped it. Everyone knew, she said. His daddy knew. The Memphis Mafia knew. The doctors knew. But nobody said no to Elvis. Elvis was the king. You didn't tell the king what to do. Nancy tried. In her own way, I'd hide the pills sometimes, she admitted, just to slow him down. He'd get so mad, he'd search the whole house looking for them. But it was like trying to stop a flood with your hands. There were always more pills, always more doctors willing to prescribe them. Nancy described a particularly bad incident. Elvis had taken too much medication before a show. He could barely stand, Nancy remembered, but they pushed him on stage anyway. He made it through, but just barely. After the show, Elvis was unconscious for hours. I thought he was dead, Nancy said quietly. I really did. But he woke up, and the next day, it was like nothing happened. This became the pattern. Elvis would push himself to the edge, nearly die, then recover, and do it all again. It was like watching someone slowly kill themselves, Nancy said, and there was nothing any of us could do to stop it. Nancy knew it was just a matter of time. Elvis was preparing for another tour. Nancy could see he wasn't ready. He looked terrible, Nancy said bluntly. Swollen, could barely walk, but he was determined to do those shows. Nancy described Elvis's routine in those final weeks. He'd wake up around 4 p.m., take pills to wake up, eat a huge meal, take more pills, stay up all night, take pills to sleep around 8 a.m. His whole schedule was upside down, Nancy explained, and his body couldn't take it anymore. On August 15th, the day before Elvis died, Nancy was at Graceland as usual. He came down that evening, Nancy recalled. He looked tired, more tired than usual. Elvis told Nancy he was having trouble sleeping. He was worried about the tour, worried he wouldn't be able to perform. He said, Nancy, I don't know if I can do this anymore, she remembered. That scared me because Elvis never admitted weakness. That night, Elvis was supposed to fly to Portland, Maine for the first show of his tour. But he kept delaying. He said he needed more rest, Nancy explained. He went back upstairs around midnight. Nancy finished her work and went home around 2 a.m. That was the last time she saw Elvis alive. The next afternoon, August 16th, Nancy got a phone call. They said Elvis was dead, she recalled. I didn't believe it. I'd heard false alarms before, but this time, it was real. Nancy rushed to Graceland. The place was chaos. Ambulances, police, staff crying, fans gathering at the gates. I went up to his room, Nancy said. They'd already taken his body, but you could still see where he'd fallen, on the bathroom floor. Nancy broke down, describing this moment. He died alone, she said. In a bathroom, the biggest star in the world, and he died alone on a floor. What haunted Nancy even more was what she found while cleaning his room later. Pills everywhere, she said. Bottles on the nightstand, pills on the floor, in his pockets. It was like a pharmacy exploded. Nancy helped pack up Elvis's belongings after his death. She found journals where Elvis had written about his pain, his loneliness, his desire to be free. He was trapped, Nancy explained. Trapped by fame, by expectations, by his own body that was failing him. The official cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia heart attack. But Nancy knew better. Those pills killed him, she said firmly. Maybe not directly that night, but over time, they destroyed his body. Nancy attended Elvis's funeral. She watched as thousands of fans lined the streets. She saw the grief of people who'd never even met him. Everyone loved Elvis the performer, Nancy observed, but very few people knew Elvis the man. And that's why Nancy stayed silent for so long. I didn't want to hurt his memory, she explained. I didn't want people to think badly of him. But as years passed, Nancy saw how the myths grew, how people created false stories, how the real Elvis got buried under sensationalism. I realized somebody needed to tell the truth, Nancy said. Not to hurt him, but to honor who he really was. Elvis wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. He struggled with addiction. He pushed people away. But he was also kind, generous, and deeply human. He was just a man, Nancy said simply. A man with a gift who paid a terrible price for fame. But Nancy had one more revelation, something she'd never told anyone until these final interviews. The night before Elvis died, August 15th, Nancy had a conversation with him that she'd replayed in her mind for 36 years. Elvis had come down to the kitchen around 10 p.m. He wanted burnt bacon and eggs. Nancy cooked for him, and while he ate, they talked. He asked me about my grandkids, Nancy recalled. He always asked about my family. He cared about us. Then Elvis said something strange. He said, "Nancy, if something happens to me, I want you to know you were one of the good ones," Nancy remembered. He said, "You never judged me. You never used me. Thank you for that." Nancy was confused. I said, "Elvis, what are you talking about? Nothing's going to happen to you." Elvis just smiled sadly. He said, "You never know, Nancy. You just never know." At the time, Nancy thought he was just being dramatic. Elvis could be dramatic, but looking back, she believes Elvis knew. "I think he knew he was dying," Nancy said. "I think his body was telling him it couldn't go on much longer." Elvis finished his food. He thanked Nancy. He went back upstairs, and less than 12 hours later, he was dead. "If I'd known those were going to be our last words, I would have said more," Nancy reflected. "I would have told him how much we all cared about him, how much he meant to us." But Nancy didn't know. Nobody did. Nancy also revealed something about Elvis's funeral that most people don't know. At the service, Nancy stood in the back with the other staff. She watched as celebrities and dignitaries paid their respects. But what struck her was Elvis's father, Vernon. "He was destroyed," Nancy said. "Completely destroyed. He kept saying, 'I should have stopped him. I should have done something.'" Vernon blamed himself for not intervening with the drug use, for enabling his son, for letting doctors prescribe whatever Elvis wanted. Everyone felt guilty, Nancy observed. Everyone thought they could have done something different. But Nancy came to realize something important over the years. Elvis was going to do what Elvis wanted to do, she said. Nobody could have saved him because he didn't want to be saved. This was the hardest truth Nancy learned. Elvis knew the drugs were killing him. His body was failing. But he kept going because he didn't know how to stop. Being Elvis was all he knew, Nancy explained. If he stopped, if he slowed down, who would he be? Just a regular person? He couldn't imagine that. So Elvis kept performing, kept taking pills, kept pushing until his body gave out. "It's the saddest thing I ever witnessed," Nancy said. "Watching someone you care about destroy themselves and not being able to stop them." After Elvis died, Nancy continued working at Graceland for a while. But it wasn't the same. The house felt empty, she said. Even with all the tourists coming through, it felt like a tomb. Eventually, Nancy retired. She lived quietly in Memphis, raising her family, trying to move on. But she never forgot Elvis. And she never stopped caring about his memory. "He was a good man who made mistakes," Nancy said. "He deserves to be remembered for his talent, his generosity, and his humanity, not just the tabloid stories." That's why Nancy finally decided to speak, to set the record straight, to give Elvis the dignity in death that he'd lost in his final years of life. "I owed him that," Nancy said simply. "After all those years of loyalty, I owed him the truth." Nancy Rooks passed away at the age of 83. She never sought fame from her connection to Elvis. She never wrote a tell-all book. She never sold her story to tabloids. She just quietly lived her life, keeping Elvis's secrets until she felt the time was right to share them. And what she shared gives us a more complete picture of Elvis Presley than we've ever had before. Not Elvis the icon, not Elvis the caricature, but Elvis the man. A man who loved burnt bacon and was generous with his staff. A man who missed his mother and couldn't escape his addiction. A man who was kind one moment and temperamental the next. A human being struggling with the impossible burden of being the king of rock and roll. Nancy's testimony is valuable because she had no agenda. She didn't need money. She didn't seek attention. She simply wanted people to understand who Elvis really was. He wasn't perfect, Nancy said in her final interview. But he was real, and he deserved better than what happened to him. The tragedy of Elvis Presley isn't that he died at 42. It's that nobody could save him from himself. Not his family, not his friends, not the people like Nancy who genuinely cared about him. Elvis was surrounded by people, but he died alone. Because when you're that famous, that powerful, that isolated by your own legend, nobody can reach you. Nancy understood this better than most. I was in his house every day, she said, but I couldn't save him. Nobody could. He was already gone long before he died that day. This is the truth Nancy Rooks wanted the world to know. Not that Elvis was a drug addict who destroyed himself, but that Elvis was a complicated, talented, troubled man who got lost inside his own fame. And that everyone who loved him, including Nancy, wishes they could have done more. But you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You can only witness, remember, and when the time is right, tell the truth. Nancy Rooks did that. And in doing so, she gave Elvis Presley the gift he always wanted but never received: to be seen as human, not as the king, not as a legend, just as Elvis. A man who tried his best, made mistakes, and paid the ultimate price for fame. If this story touched you, if it gave you a new understanding of Elvis Presley, subscribe to King of Rock and Roll and hit that notification bell. We've got more untold stories from the people who really knew the king. And let us know in the comments, what surprised you the most about Nancy's revelations? Stay tuned for more content. Long live the king.